Rina has already experienced the devastating loss of her husband, Omar, due to an Israeli airstrike. Now, she is filled with fear that her baby son, Ahmed, may succumb to disease or the cold weather in the freezing tent they currently call home near the Egyptian border. This makeshift shelter is their fifth in as many weeks as they continue to flee across Gaza. Since Omar's death in October, Rina's breast milk has dried up, leaving her with the daunting task of finding formula and clean water to keep her only child alive amidst the chaos and destruction. The constant search for these basic necessities has become the only stability in her life as she navigates the war-torn region. The weeks of bombing and siege have transformed Gaza into a desolate place filled with hungry refugees and the looming threat of disease. As Israel expands its ground war southward, even its allies have warned of an impending humanitarian catastrophe. U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris stated that too many innocent Palestinians have been killed, while UK opposition leader Keir Starmer cautioned Israel against waging a bloody war in southern Gaza similar to its campaign in the north. According to health authorities under the Hamas-run government, over 15,900 people, mostly women and children, have lost their lives since the war began. Tanks are now positioning themselves around Khan Yunis city, and intense airstrikes have followed warnings for civilians to evacuate. Rina, originally from North Gaza, made the difficult decision to hit the road once again. She had hoped to find safety or at least some respite from the constant sound of Israeli bombings that terrorized her infant son when they reached Khan Yunis. Unfortunately, the bombings persisted relentlessly. They sought refuge in a house with over 60 other displaced individuals. But essential services like water, electricity, and communication were completely cut off. Each move they make brings them to worse conditions and more overcrowding in the shrinking safe areas designated by Israel. Rina describes their latest stop in Rafah as inhabiting unsuitable tents with no proper bathroom facilities and overwhelming numbers of displaced people. Epidemics are spreading, and the harsh conditions, extreme cold, and lack of adequate belongings make survival even more challenging. The UN estimates that approximately 4 out of 5 people in Gaza are displaced, and the aid reaching the region is insufficient to cover even the most basic emergency needs. The World Health Organization warns that the situation is deteriorating rapidly, and the UN Humanitarian Coordinator for Occupied Palestinian Territory predicts an even more dire scenario unfolding. Just 2 months ago, Rina and her family lived in Beit Lahia, one of the northernmost settlements in Gaza. They left their home in the early days of the war, seeking temporary refuge with Rina's mother, then her sister, and finally her grandfather. Tragically, on October 17, Omar was killed while searching for supplies for the family when a missile struck nearby. Shrapnel from the explosion not only took Omar's life but also shattered Rina's world. The loss of her husband is incomprehensible to Rina. Omar was her everything, and his absence feels like losing her entire existence. She wishes she had died alongside him. After his death, her emotional state deteriorated, and she could no longer breastfeed Ahmed. In October, the family ignored Israeli warnings to evacuate the north because they felt they had nowhere else to go. Shelters in the south were overcrowded and also under attack. There are no truly safe places in Gaza, and civilians must weigh the risks of airstrikes and shootings against access to basic necessities like food, clean water, toilets, and a place to sleep. As the fighting intensified in the north, Rina and her family realized that they would not have access to even basic medical care. 2 of Rina's brothers-in-law were injured during an Israeli raid on a nearby house. Despite their severe injuries, ambulance crews were unable to reach them. When a ceasefire was finally agreed upon, Rina made the difficult decision to leave. On the 4th day of the truce, she set out with her son, carrying only the essentials, and headed for Khan Yunis. She hoped that an overcrowded shelter would provide some protection for Ahmed. However, on December 1st, Israel dropped leaflets ordering them to move once again. The leaflets contained a QR code linking to a map of Gaza, divided into numbered blocks for evacuation orders. However, power outages and communication blackouts made accessing the internet and viewing the map challenging. When Rina finally managed to see the map, she was overcome with horror. They left soon after for Rafah, trading worse conditions for less intense bombings, although Israeli airstrikes still pose a threat in this area as well. Rina tries her best not to dwell on the possibility of what would happen to Ahmed if the bombs that took his father's life also took hers. The thought of her son growing up as an orphan is unbearable. He is innocent and does not deserve to suffer and endure this pain.